And welcome back to Habs Unfiltered, episode 425. I'm your host, Blain, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Smith.
Good evening.
And we have a very special guest on this fun, loving episode, our very own NHL rumor genius, Spector's Hockey, Lyle Richardson. Welcome back.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's great to be back, and I'm glad you guys are done all your globetrotting now for a while, so we can
Well,
we can get
until
into talking Habs again.
maybe until the spring.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't time to ruin your playoff enjoyment. There you
Right?
go.
Jeez.
Damn it! Why do you do this every spring?
Why do I need to have a job? So, before we begin the episode, I just want to acknowledge something that happened at work, actually. One of my coworkers, a friend of mine, passed away in an accident while we were doing some work on board the ship. It's probably you've probably seen it in the news by now, so I just want to just say, our job isn't the easiest job. People think that just because we're not running around in the desert with a rifle, there's no danger, but there is an inherent danger in everything that we do. So, for anyone else that doesn't serve or never plans on it, that's fine. Just make sure that you hug your loved ones a little bit tighter and let them know how you feel because you never know. Um, so, and on that, we'll get into hockey now so I can feel like a normal human being. Um, so we're going to talk a little bit about the trade rumors and everything that's coming up with the Four Nations and all that. So, Matt, off camera, you came up with a pretty good question for Lyle.
I'm just wondering if are we going to see the real trade deadline in March, or are we going to see it before the Four Nations?
I have a feeling we'll see it before the Four Nations, and as we discussed just before the show, you had asked if there was going to be a roster freeze or a trade freeze during that 2 week period when the Four Nations are being staged, and there's nothing definitive yet. I've checked on the NHL media site. They've got the just the dates that where they're saying that yeah, the Four Nations, the league will be pausing for that. There's nothing there that says anything about a roster freeze or a trade freeze. However, I'm assuming it will be just thinking back to the last time when the NHL participated in the Olympics, and of course, this Four Nation thing is, of course, let's face it, it's a lead up to the Olympics next year. Back then, there were roster freezes in place during that period, so there was no trade activity then. So I'm assuming that that's what's going to happen here, which, because let's be honest, I mean, it would be awfully uncomfortable if one of the players, participating in that tournament found out they were a part of a blockbuster. Right, Miko Rantanen? Of course, you understand. But anyway, so yeah, anyway, that's just my assumption. There's been nothing officially reported yet either. But that being said though, we could see the lead up to the Four Nations. We could see an increase in trade activity, and especially after that blockbuster deal on Friday, where of course, for those of you listening who may not have heard, yeah, the Avalanche traded Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes for Jack Drury, Marty Necas, and two draft picks. It was a three-team deal that was brokered by the Chicago Blackhawks, with the Blackhawks picking up half of Rantanen's salary and sending Taylor Hall to the Hurricanes in exchange for a third-round pick. And we'll let Blackhawks fans stir in that, and we'll return to this. So yeah, that could be a big kickoff. That's not just a domino being knocked over, that's the whole frickin' domino table being flipped.
Right.
So yeah, I would not be surprised if we see a lot more activity leading up to that, and especially because the salary cap is projected to significantly increase for next season. That played a part in, the reason why Rantanen is now in Carolina. So that's something to keep in mind. Like I said, yeah, it could be a pretty busy week or so, or 10 days leading up to the Four Nations. And let's hope that they leave. If so, let's hope they leave some players of interest, or else the TSN's trade deadline show is going to be a lot deader than normal. So,
Right.
Now
But
that obviously points out that Carolina is going all in. I mean,
Absolutely.
you go get yourself a superstar in Rantanen, and you pick up Taylor Hall for depth. I can't imagine what Bedard's face looked like when he was reading the cap and saying, "Oh, I got Rantanen." Ah, crap, he's not here. Um, but but what's going through my head is why in the hell would Colorado do that? I know they would. They're thinking they may lose the player, but they're going for a cup too. Why would you get rid of the better player out of that whole bunch?
I think that this is indicative that they know they don't have a Stanley Cup team this year. I think that that's indicative of that. Um, excuse me. I mean, to be fair to them, I mean they were walloped by injuries in the first half. I mean, I'm impressed. It's only because of McKinnon and McCarr, guys like that that they're still clinging on to a wild card spot. But yeah, their depth has been depleted. Their goaltending at least has improved. Stick tap to Mackenzie
Yep.
Blackwood. It's good to see him finally with a really good team where he can show what he can do. But they knew they weren't going to be able to afford to sign him. And rather, the assumption was, well, though, even I believe they would hang on to him for one more run for a cup, treat him as an own rental, and then, well, thank you very much for a decade with us, buddy. We'll catch you on the flip side. But Chris McFarland, or his comments, that's the Abs general manager, his comments was that they wanted to get something out of this. They didn't want to lose him for nothing. And they wanted two guys that, you know, were signed beyond this season,
Yep.
which Natchez and Drury are, and younger players to boot as well. Natchez isn't a bad player, obviously. I mean, he's a good scoring forward.
Yep.
Tends to disappear in the playoffs, so that's not good. But who knows? Maybe a change of venue and playing alongside a guy like McKinnon and guys like Makar, maybe that will elevate his play. Maybe perhaps the same thing for Drury. I mean, he was, once upon a time considered one of the Hurricanes' top prospects. He's basically been in a depth role, and I'm sure he's going to stay in that role with the Avs. But nevertheless, um, yeah, this was about. They're not blowing it up, but they're retooling. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I noticed that there's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth in the Denver media over this, and some Habs fans, Habs fans, Avs, that they're you know some of them are a bit perturbed too, and that's understandable. Rantanen was homegrown. They drafted him, they developed him, he became a superstar, and he is a
Yep.
superstar. So it sucks to lose him, but he wanted the same kind of money that Leon Draisaitl's getting. And the Avs were like, no, we prefer if you accepted something closer to 12 mil. Again, significant raise, but they weren't able to close that difference. So they figured, no, instead of losing an asset, let's just take one step back this year so that hopefully we can take two steps forward for the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Pat, anything else?
Um, for me, seeing that we're not talking about the Canadians just yet,
Nope.
Hmm.
um, a team that was very hot last year, this year not so much. The Vancouver Canucks.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of talks about Miller, a lot of talks about Pedersen. Are both those guys as good as gone, or is there going to be a pick and choose?
Most of the talk out of Vancouver suggests that they wish to move Miller and that they want to hang on to Pedersen. And that's understandable. Pedersen, excuse me, is almost 5 years younger. He's a former 100 point player. And yeah, now he and Miller both their stats are down this season, but that's because again, that's a lineup that was also racked by injuries, but also you've got this rift which isn't there, but apparently something's there. But Pedersen's told them he wants to stay. So they're willing to do that. I have seen some suggest that they'd be better off if they traded both, but if you do that, you are absolutely gutting your depth at center. It's
Yep.
bad enough that you're gonna have to trade one of your top two centers. Trading both, you may as well just run up the white flag of surrender and say, yeah, we're rebuilding, and try and sell that to Quinn Hughes and Thatcher Demko and yeah, and Brock Besser. So that's the situation now. I mean, I know there's still some reports that I mean, Elliot Friedman last night said that the Buffalo Sabres are among the teams that are still interested in Pettersson. And listen, they're going to listen. The Canucks are going to listen. If they could get a better return for Pettersson, and I mean a really good return for Pettersson compared to what they could get from Miller, well, that could shift that dynamic, you
Well,
know.
I'll just throw Buffalo out there. They're
Mm.
historically known for making pretty bad deals, and it working out for the other team. So
But I think that's also, again, the Sabres may be looking into it, but they're going to go into this very cautiously because you're right, Matt. You look back with Ryan O'Reilly and Jack Eichel and
and
Sam Reinhart,
Reinhardt, yeah,
three guys who went on, like Ryan O'Reilly went on to win a Stanley Cup and a Selke Trophy and become one of the best two-way forwards in the league. Eichel goes on and wins a Stanley Cup. Reinhart goes on and win a Stanley Cup. They're both like huge star, bigger than they were ever with the Sabres. So when you hear the talk of, oh, they could move Dylan Cousins, yeah, if they're going to move Dylan Cousins, they're going to want to make absolutely damn sure that they're getting somebody like Pettersson in return. So that
right.
if Cousins does go on and that curse continues, that at least, well, Pettersson is with us and he's doing well. Um,
But
mm,
with that though, I mean, you're
mm,
looking at Buffalo and they're 14 years without a playoffs, and everything points to they just lack any real leadership, any
mm,
veteran experience.
yeah.
Is Pedersen really worth making a massive trade like that when you're not even bringing that in?
No, no. If again, I don't blame them for kicking tires, for looking into it, but just because you might be looking into it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to buy. Come on, we've all bought a vehicle once or at least once in our lives, right? You go, you kick the tires, you look at it, and then you go and you look around at other places to get the best deal. Um, but honestly, yeah, Miller's the guy though in Vancouver that apparently they want to move. But I'll tell you this. I don't think they're getting very many solid offers for this guy. And that may sound shocking because, well, wait a minute, 103 points last season. He had 99 points 2 seasons ago. He's an intense leader and really like he brings it every game. Yes, he does. But I think that, I think a lot of teams know the Canucks aren't in a very good place here right now with this. And he's 31 years old, going to be 32. He has fewer productive seasons ahead of him than Pettersson does. So, this whole thing of a deal almost went down last week with the Rangers. And depending on who you believe, the deal was going to involve Philip Hedl for sure, maybe Ryan Lindgren, a couple of minor leaguers from the Hartford Wolfpack, and a first round pick. And that was supposed to be for JT Miller. And when I read that, I thought, wow, the Rangers make out like bandits in that deal.
Yeah,
They absolutely make out like bandits if they went for that. If the holdup on that trade was they couldn't agree on the protection of that first round pick, whether it was going to be top five protected or top 10 protected, if that was the sticking point, oh my God, that's just an awful. Canucks fans would be furious if that's what they get. No offense to Philip Hedl, terrific two-way, middle six center when he's healthy. The
yeah,
bad thing is he's got that concussion history. I mean, listen, a month ago, the New York Post ran a headline that said maybe it's time for, or I think it was the Post, but one of the New York publications read, maybe it's time the Rangers parted ways with Hedel because he was hurt so much. They praised the guy to the roof. They loved him. He's well liked, well respected in the room and everywhere, and fans love him. Blah blah blah. But he can't stay healthy. And if that's one of the main pieces coming to Vancouver, sorry. I mean, when I read that they had talked about Alexis Lafreniere, I said, okay, okay. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, okay, Rangers giving up a younger player, but okay, yeah, Miller's deal would hurt in the final 2 years, but in the next three, he can maybe get you closer to that elusive Stanley Cup. So I could see that. And then if that would deal was Lafreniere and Lindgren in a first or whatever, Lindgren and that, I would say, okay, yeah, all right, that's fair. But Hedel, Lindgren, who's a UFA, no guarantees that he's gonna stay. He could end up waving bye-bye out the door on July 1st. The three Hartford Wolfpack players who were scratched from their game last Saturday. Um, Larry Brooks rattled off their names. I don't remember them all right, other than Bo Gruel. I remember his, but there's a couple of others. And you go and look them up, and it's like these are not top prospects. They're just not. There's no Othman in there, right? There's no there just isn't, you know. And so yeah, so if everything hinged on the protection rights of that first round pick, no, that's not a good deal. And that's why I think Miller's still there. I think that's the only offer that they've gotten. And it's basically, I think Chris Drew's just sitting back going, okay, take it or leave it. Take it or
Yeah.
leave it. Nobody else is gonna outbid you. Call me if somebody outbids you.
And the offer kind of screams that Vancouver just wants him gone. I
Yep.
mean, yeah, he's got 8 million bucks. He's still got 5 more years after this.
Yep.
He is going to start going downhill. They're not really set to win right now.
No.
So take what you can and get him out. But
Yep.
this is not from any insider information that I got, just by looking from the outside.
Yes.
It doesn't seem that he really fits with that team anymore. Like
Yeah.
emotionally, psychologically. It looks like he's a giant cheese grater rubbing up against the whole team.
Yeah. And it just has an air of inevitability that he's
Yeah,
going to be heading to the Rangers. And again, he hasn't been asked to waive his no movement clause yet. He hasn't given them a list of preferred trade destinations, but there just seems to be an inference that yeah, he's going to end up back with the team he began his NHL career with. He's going to end up with the Rangers before it'll either be before the trade deadline or maybe this summer, but it's going to happen.
yeah. Now there's something you wrote and released just recently about Seth Jones and
Mm.
how he's on the block. What that I know people tend to think, well, he's not that good of a player because you don't see him much out east. And even though he's with Chicago, he's still one of the top defensemen that people would be looking for.
He logs big minutes. Absolutely. He's not in a good situation there with Chicago, the
No.
rebuilding team. And he came from a team that was rebuilding, the Blue Jackets, if you recall. So not really a good situation there. He missed 16 games this season with a busted foot, so that adversely affected him as well. Though in the last 2, 3 weeks, though, he is really kind of rounded back into form. He has been garnering some positive reviews for, his performance. This guy still logs, like can still log you 25, 27 minutes a game. He can still, bring offense to his game as well. Yeah, he didn't turn into being the perennial Norris candidate we all thought that he was about to become 5 years ago when he was with the Jackets. But
Yep.
yeah, this is a guy that you could plug into any team's, top pairing on the right side. And that's the other thing too, right side defensemen, and they are
Yep.
in high demand. So, but the issue here, of course, teams are calling about Seth Jones, but from reports that I've heard and from a couple of people I know who follow the Blackhawks closely, they're not trading him, not unless he wants it. And he's given no indication that he wants out of Chicago. He hasn't, made any demand like that at all. He's got a full no move. And even if he didn't have that, 9.5 mil a season, guys, for several more years. He's signed
Yep.
through to, I believe, 2029, 30. So that's a big contract to move. If, as they say in Newfoundland, if I can say that because my wife's from Newfoundland. But if they decide to move him or if he wants to go, I think that's a summer move.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, when teams have the cap space, and even then, the Blackhawks might be obliged to pick up part of it. But, now you could say, well, wow, another 5 years of dead cap space, that's not really, a good thing. But if the cap is going up, 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 and you've got lots of cap room to begin with, maybe it's best if you could move, even if you're carrying, like 4.75 mil a season for the next 5 years. That's better than 9.5 mil.
even if they
So,
took a bad contract in return, because you look at
and
their roster,
yep, they
they
could do that
are
too.
they're hurting for NHL capable players,
Yep.
especially those who are capable of, I don't know, supporting that one star player they have, especially after getting rid of Taylor Hall. I
Mhm.
mean, you're not looking for a guy that's going to score 40 goals. You're looking for somebody that can fill NHL minutes reliably.
But I think though but to be fair, Blaine, they have been doing that over the last 2 years since Kyle
Yeah.
Davidson came in. To be fair, they have. The problem is that the guys they brought in, most of them are on the downside of their career. Taylor
Yeah.
Hall, downside of his
Yep.
career. Okay. Excuse me. Nick Foligno, yep, he's their captain, and yes, he's a heart and soul guy, downside of his career, and so on. Excuse me. But they're going to have a lot of cap space to work with this summer.
Yes.
They're going shopping and they're going to try and sign guys via free agency and they're going to try and use some of their draft picks and prospects. I think, this is just me, I think they're going to use some of their draft picks and prospects to go shopping for players mid to late 20s who fit in with their younger players. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you can have guys that are 25, 27, 28 who've been in the league 5, 6, 7 years, right? So plenty of NHL experience, but in their prime. So they can, be in a better position to be in that leadership ability and at the same time have the talent to help lift your team and take that burden off of Connor Bedard.
Yeah, but there's still not quite what you'd call a destination. They would have to overpay some of these guys
Money, yeah,
for sure
but if you've
if
got
you
the
got the
cap
money.
space to do it, and if you've got the trade capital to do it, go for it. Because
Yeah.
they can't just keep going to the well again and bringing in, well, we've got these guys that are 10, 12-year NHL veterans who are on the downside of their careers. They've done that.
Yeah.
By the same token though, they've got to be careful of which type of player they're bringing in. Tyler Bertuzzi was not the right type of player bringing in, and not a knock on Tyler Bertuzzi. Tyler Bertuzzi is a terrific player on a playoff contender. On a playoff contender.
Yeah.
He was not the right kind of player to plug in to a rebuilding club.
You need
That's how he
guys
does the
that
best work.
that have that character,
Yeah.
not only are they got that dog in them, they play with jam, but you need
Hmm.
those guys that are going to set a proper example, like a Brendan Gallagher style.
Hmm.
Somebody
Yeah.
that's going to give you everything every shift,
Yeah. Hard
regardless.
working, heart and
Yeah.
soul, leave it all out on the ice every game. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know it's not going to be easy for them to do it, but
Yeah.
you've got two things working in your favor. One, you're Chicago, okay? You're the
Yeah.
Blackhawks. You're a team with, original 16, rich history. Not all that long ago, people who were playing in this league or youngs coming up can still remember when the Blackhawks dominated. So you could be a part of what they're trying to build there. And second, and most importantly, here's your chance to play with Connor Bedard. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
like to be the guy, his line mate, or riding shotgun, or being, his defender, the guy, who will lift and elevate your game as well? That's a major selling point too. So they've got that.
And they've got, like you said, they do have the trade assets. They could make trades for
Hmm.
younger guys from
Yep.
other teams, give them second chances. Like you look at the Trevor Zegras out of Anaheim,
Hmm.
who's being muscled
Yeah.
out. Maybe they get him for on the cheap as well.
Very well
And
could.
how
Very well
how good of
could.
a fit would he be with Bedard?
Oh, those two would be dynamite. I mean,
Yeah.
Zegras wouldn't be playing center. Zegras is not an NHL
No.
center. He's a winger
Yeah.
and a very talented winger. So, yeah, put him on the same line with Bedard. Yeah, if they got some chemistry, look out. Now you've got a first line that's going to be deadly every night.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Canadians fans are starting to see that on their own team now. And how good is that? Um, And we're going to get into that here in the second half. We're going to take a quick break. And then
Mhm.
when we come back, we're actually going to talk Habs. So stick around. We'll be right back.